Have you ever noticed something strange? The more you try to understand a situation, the more complicated it becomes. You replay the conversation, you think about what you said, then you start wondering what the other person really meant, and suddenly a simple "okay" becomes a 30-minute investigation inside your head. But here's the interesting part. What if your overthinking isn't always a sign that something is wrong with you? What if your brain is simply trying too hard to understand everything? Because sometimes the same brain that helps you notice patterns, solve problems, and think deeply can also make you question things that probably didn't need questioning in the first place. Imagine someone sends you a message, "Can we talk later?" For most people, that might be it. Sure, maybe they just want to talk. But an overthinking brain can take that tiny sentence and create an entire investigation. Why do they want to talk? Did I do something? Why did they say it like that? Is something wrong? And suddenly, one sentence has created 10 possible explanations. That's because some people naturally spend more time analyzing information and considering different possibilities. Your brain doesn't just ask, "What happened?" It asks, "What else could this mean?" And that kind of thinking can actually be useful. It can help you notice patterns. It can help you solve complicated problems. It can help you see possibilities that other people might completely miss. But every strength has a point where it can become unhelpful. Imagine your brain is constantly scanning for possibilities. At first, that sounds useful, but then you start preparing for every possible outcome. What if that happens? What if something goes wrong, and instead of helping you prepare for life, your brain starts making you mentally live through situations that haven't even happened? Your brain is actually very good at predicting what might happen next. Before making a decision, you might imagine different outcomes. What if I say this? What if they react like that? What if everything goes wrong? This mental simulation can be useful. We use it to plan, to prepare, to avoid mistakes. But there's a catch. Your brain doesn't always know when to stop. Think about walking into a room after an awkward conversation. One person might simply notice they seem quiet, but another person might notice everything. Their facial expression, their tone of voice, how long they took to respond, even the exact words they used. Being observant doesn't automatically mean someone is more intelligent, but when your brain collects more details, it also has more information to analyze. And sometimes that's where things get complicated. A pause becomes a hidden message. A different tone becomes a warning. A short reply suddenly feels meaningful. Your brain starts connecting dots, even when those dots might not actually be connected. And that's one of the biggest traps of overthinking. Sometimes we don't just observe reality, we start creating explanations for it. Now imagine you're waiting for someone to reply to your message. They haven't replied for 3 hours. You don't know why. Maybe they're busy, maybe they forgot, maybe they're ignoring you. The problem is, you don't know, and the human brain really doesn't like uncertainty. So your brain starts filling the empty space with explanations. What if they're angry? What if I said something wrong? What if something changed? And the longer you have no answer, the more stories your brain can create. But remember this, not knowing something doesn't mean something bad is happening. Sometimes there simply isn't enough information yet. And this is where things get really interesting. You can be extremely logical and still overthink something emotionally important. You can understand exactly why something happened and still feel hurt by it. You can know that someone probably didn't mean anything and still replay their words in your head. Your logical brain might say, "It's not a big deal," but your emotional brain says, "Okay, but why did it feel like that?" And suddenly, there's an argument happening inside your own head, because being intelligent doesn't mean you stop having emotions. Understanding an emotion and controlling an emotion are two completely different things. Now we come to the biggest trap of overthinking. Sometimes we believe, if I keep thinking about this, I'll eventually figure it out. So we replay the conversation again and again and again. We analyze every word, every pause, every facial expression. But here's the problem. If you don't have enough information to know what really happened, Thinking about it another 20 times won't magically give you that information. At that point, you're not solving the problem, you're creating theories, and theories can create even more theories. That's how your brain gets stuck in a loop. So, does overthinking mean you're intelligent? Not necessarily. This part is important. Psychology doesn't say that everyone who overthinks is secretly a genius. Intelligence is much more complicated than that. But certain cognitive abilities, like analyzing information, considering possibilities, and thinking deeply, can sometimes contribute to overthinking. And things like anxiety, perfectionism, stress, and uncertainty can make that cycle even stronger. So don't romanticize overthinking. Being exhausted by your own thoughts isn't a superpower. Your ability to think deeply can be a strength. You just need to learn when thinking is helping you and when it's simply going in circles. So the next time you catch yourself replaying the same situation for the 10th time, stop for a second and ask yourself one simple question. Am I solving this, or am I just thinking about it? Because sometimes your brain doesn't need another theory, doesn't need another prediction, and it definitely doesn't need another replay of the same conversation. Sometimes it just needs permission to let the question remain unanswered, and maybe learning when to stop thinking is one of the smartest things you can learn to do. If this video described your brain a little too accurately, you're definitely not alone.